Welcome to Sustainable Packaging with Cory Connors. Today, my guest is Lindsey McCoy, the CEO and co-founder of Plaine Products. Hey, Lindsey, how are you?
Hi, Cory. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for making time for us. We're excited to see what you're doing in the industry. It's very innovative. And when I saw your products, I immediately thought, oh, I have to have them on the show. So tell us about yourself. How'd you get into this industry?
Yeah, non-traditionally, my background's actually in nonprofit management. So
Oh,
I have
of
a
course.
master's in public affairs and spent 20 years working in the nonprofit world. The last 10 of that was actually in the Bahamas. My husband's from the Bahamas, so we lived there. I ended up doing environmental education work, mainly because I lived in Boulder, Colorado, and had just absorbed some things.
Yeah.
So when I was doing that work, I kept running into plastic everywhere. They don't have the same infrastructure we have here in the US to make things disappear when you're done with them. So I would, see the floating in the water, see plastic on the beach at beach cleanups, be out with scientists in the middle of nowhere, find plastic. And so I started doing things, this was back in 2015, a lot of things that we're doing now, carrying the reusable water bottle and the reusable shopping bags, but I couldn't find a way to replace all of those plastic bottles in my shower. Around that time, we decided to move back to the US for a variety of reasons. I was ready to take a break from nonprofit fundraising.
Yeah.
And thought maybe I could, do this in a different way. My dad had been an entrepreneur throughout his life. So it didn't seem crazy to me to try and start a business. If dad could do it, I could do it.
Yeah.
So I actually called my sister and said, hey, I've got this idea. I think we could figure this out. Do you want to do it with me? And she happily said yes. And we had no idea what we were getting into. And that was, as I said, 2015. And we launched in February of 2017.
Wow. I think I originally saw your products on TikTok. So you're very diverse in your marketing. I'm proud of you.
We are trying. Yes. It's our main differentiator is that packaging, and it's a story to tell.
Yeah.
So we are trying to use a lot of different channels to tell that story, because it does kind of require, a reframing and thinking about things a little bit differently to understand why you'd want to buy shampoo in a reusable bottle.
Yeah, so let's explain the packaging to the listeners, because not everybody can watch the show. So it's a aluminum, looks like a rounded top with a smaller opening, beautiful, very minimal print, very elegant looking bottles that's totally reusable and recyclable.
Yeah, so this is how it works. And by the way, my sister will be delighted to hear you say elegant. That's exactly it. She's the designer in the family. That's what she was going for. You come to the website, order your product. It shows up with a pump, put the pump on, use it. And then when you're running low, come back to the website or subscribe, and we'll just send a refill bottle and a return label. So when your first bottle is empty, switch the pump over, put the empty bottle in that box the refill came in, and it comes back to us for free. And then we wash, sterilize, and send it off to be refilled. And then, the nice thing about aluminum is once it's gone around a few times, it can be recycled completely with no quality loss. So those bottles never need to end up in the waste stream.
And forever. That's the cool thing. I agree.
That is the cool thing.
Aluminum is eternally recyclable, and manufacturers of aluminum products actually prefer using recycled aluminum. It's a little easier to get than the raw materials out of the ground. So well done. So where are you located, and where do consumers ship back to?
We are based in Cincinnati, Ohio, which is where my family is from. And then happily, there's a bottle manufacturer in Youngstown, not too far away. So yeah, so they come back there. And, I think in a perfect world, as this model grows and takes off, hopefully we'll start to see more infrastructure of reuse and have cleaning options at points around the country. And I think that's really when this starts to make even more sense.
Yeah.
It's not great to be shipping bottles back and forth across the country, but we just wanted to prove that the model could work and that there was an appetite for reuse and for less waste. So, we're starting to slowly see some other brands try it out, investigate it. And I do hope that we'll get to a point where there will be lots of different places where you can have bottles washed and they can be collected and reused in a variety of different ways.
Yeah. I'm very excited. Today is actually the first day that Loop is coming to Portland, Oregon, where I live. So
Yeah,
this is someone who's emulating you, and it's a similar style program. So maybe someday you could team up with them.
we have.
Oh, wonderful.
So they started with a pilot in New England doing delivery, and we were one of the brands that they carried. We're
Awesome.
not in the Fred Meyer pilot. It just didn't work the way that it's through Kroger, and
Yeah.
they obviously use giant distributors, and us being such a small company, it didn't make sense for us to pay the fees to get into a distributor for 2 products for 20 stores in Oregon.
Yeah.
But we are working with them on some other things. And yeah, as I said, I mean, I think the goal in all of this is to just keep getting large enough to make
Yeah.
sense to build that infrastructure out. So
I love that word. I think that's it. That's the missing element to some of these sustainable initiatives is infrastructure. If Joe and Jill consumer could go to their local, grocery store, buy your product, and then bring it back the next time, that's the easiest way to do it, right? And the most efficient. Then, we could eliminate all those single shipments back to Ohio. Although Ohio is centrally located, so that's kind of nice.
we are lucky in that my sister happened to be living in a place that, yes, is a good place to be shipping and receiving from. So that did work out well. And it really, so yeah, for a lot of the country, it works out just fine. But yeah, it
Yeah.
would be great to have something out west to minimize that shipping. And I do think it's something that people are looking at more and more. Plastic is an absolutely amazing material for so many things.
Yep.
It just doesn't make a ton of sense as a resource for something that we use once and then, unfortunately throw it away and often not recycled.
Yeah, I was interviewing someone a couple weeks ago, who it was, but she said, "Why are we using a product that will last forever for a single shipment?" And I just thought, wow, that's interesting way to look at it. Although it is recyclable, so I think we need to look at all things and really consider how the infrastructure, like you said, is going to work best for the consumer to continue to be sustainable. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I don't think there's going to be a solution to
Yeah.
what we're facing. I mean, everything was one way for the, early until the 1950s when plastic was invented. Everything's completely changed. I mean, I think we're looking at another change, and I don't think we know quite what the end result of that is going to be. And I'm certainly, you know, think that it's going to require a variety of different solutions. And
Yeah.
I know there are a lot of people doing some interesting stuff with plastic recycling. Unfortunately, right now, most plastic can only be recycled once before it becomes waste, just because of the way they sort of melt it down and reuse it. Hopefully that'll change. But yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a variety of things. And, if there's one thing consumers want, it's options, variety.
Yeah.
So I think it's great to have a lot of different solutions out there for them.
Yeah, I haven't heard that or plastic could only be recycled once.
Sometimes twice, but I guess the way that they melt it down and change the chemical bonds, you can't. Whereas aluminum, you melt it down, it's still aluminum. I mean, plastic,
Yeah.
when you melt it down, it then turns into a different type of plastic. And so you could only do that so many times
Hmm.
before, at least right now, it turns into waste.
Interesting. I like what TerraCycle or what Trex is doing to make plastic into reusable building products.
That
They're
makes so much sense.
That's such a
Yeah.
cool option for, although many would consider that downcycling. Yeah.
I still, I'm just in favor of us using it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a non-renewable resource, so let's not stick it in a landfill. Let's at
Right.
least reuse it in a way, that it's being used. We've bothered to pull it out of the ground. We might as well not just, stick it back in. It just seems like a poor use of resources, a poor match for its
Yeah.
ability.
Well, tell us about your products. So it's a shampoo, it's a conditioner. What kind of products?
We started with shampoo and conditioner. We've since expanded to 16 different products. So we have a body lotion, body wash, a facial line, hand sanitizer,
Oh,
which many
good.
people added over the last few. Beauty oil, hair repair. We're about to add a hair and body wash sort of combo for people who want less bottles in the shower altogether.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, we have continued to expand, and we were able to find a great manufacturer. So all of the products, it didn't make sense to create this environmental package and then stick a bunch of chemicals in it.
Yeah.
So, the products are natural, vegan, cruelty free, and we work with a great team who it's not every manufacturer that at the time reusing bottles sounded a little, it was a different concept. So we actually had to go and meet with them and talk to their chemists on staff and talk about all the ways that we could make sure that, it was going to be safe for everyone. And they have been amazing in working with us every step of the process.
Oh, that's fantastic. Do you have one of the bottles there that we could show the camera?
I do.
Eventually this will be on YouTube. Oh, that's beautiful. So yeah, I like that elegant top that we were talking about. Well done.
It is so funny to me, as I mentioned, my background's in nonprofit management. It wasn't until I actually went to a packaging conference a few years ago that I started learning, how much of an industry just this packaging piece is, and how, it's always interesting to get into an industry and realize how much of it exists that you're just as an outsider unaware of.
I always say it's the biggest industry that nobody thinks about, unless they're complaining about, oh, I hate this. This, they call me, oh, these clamshells. Why do you use clamshells for scissors when I need scissors to open the clamshells? Things like that are always the running joke, right?
Yes, right. It's a packaging's job to be invisible and just make life easier, right?
Right. Which I think you're helping do. And I think you're helping keep things out of the landfill, which is wonderful. Good job.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the goal. I mean, it's been a fascinating journey, kind of coming at this as someone who didn't have that background to learn a ton about bottles, about pumps, about all of these things, and kind of come at it as a novice and just keep asking questions. And people have been very kind. We spent almost 2 years just asking questions of people.
I've had many conversations with people saying, we want to start this brand. We want to do this thing. How do we start? And I think that's the scary first step, right? And so kudos to you for sticking it out.
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's some sort of fear of people that they don't know enough to get started, and a fear of asking questions. I mean, that you just have to kind of let go of your ego a little bit, and we'd ask questions, and then I'd be like, I asked completely the wrong questions. Like, hi, it's me again. I now know what I should be asking you, which is X, Y, and Z. Can we please talk again?
I've been in this industry for 24 years and I still learn something new every day. Honestly, there are so many things to know. There's so much to learn. You have to stay humble, and you have to understand that you're never going to learn it all. And that's okay, because there's a lot of really smart people in this industry that will help you.
Yeah, no, people are kind. And I do think that that's just a key, really, it seems like anything. It's just being willing to learn. We've constantly, this is a new process, so we're constantly evolving. How do we explain it? How do we communicate it? How do we help people think about the way they consume, and the waste that's created, and on TikTok and on other channels. And we started out with a slogan like "Join the packaging revolution," and then I realized that didn't mean anything to anyone because they don't think about packaging. And so, how can we, talk about it in a way that's more familiar? And it's a constant learning process and experimentation.
When I started this podcast about 10 months ago, I reached out to a supplier that makes labels so I could get some promotional labels like this one here on my microphone. And I said, I want sustainable material. And he said, what does that mean? So, and this is somebody I respect that's been in the industry for many years. What does that mean? And I said, well, I'm not sure. I think it means, something that's recyclable. Maybe we have a paper backer material for the labels, so that it was a real good question. What does that mean? Well, it means, I interviewed a guy named Jamie from Bluebird Climate, and he said, sustainability means nothing and it means everything. And I thought, wow, that is really insightful.
Yeah, when I was working in the Bahamas, I was meeting with, a very well respected member of the government. And he said, so where does the trash we throw overboard go? And I was like, what do you mean? Where does it go? Like, it just sits there. And it's just it's fascinating to start to have these conversations with people, and you realize that they just have never thought about it. Oh. The label guy had never thought about what happens to his products after they leave,
Yeah.
and people are done with them. So that's the fascinating part to me, is just trying to help people sort of think about, just one step outside of their day-to-day life and the choices that they make, that the impact that they can have, and thinking about what they purchase a little bit differently.
I agree 100%. It's a mind shift. It's a mindset of embracing responsibility. That extended producer responsibility is coming soon. It's already on in Oregon and Maine and South Africa, and many other countries are getting on board with this. It's going to
It does
affect
seem
all
only
of us.
fair that everybody should have to pay the true cost of their products. And right now there are a lot of products in the world that are artificially cheap,
Yep.
and are only cheap because there is no extended responsibility. And it's the price our kids, grandkids are going to be, somebody's going to pay it eventually.
So true. So true. So what's next for you guys? You're going to expand the brands,
we're going to continue
smaller
to expand
bottles,
products,
different things.
and then we've also added a bulk option, so like a 3.5 gallon bucket, and we're seeing refill shops pop up around the country where people can bring their own bottles in and refill them themselves, which is amazing to me as a human, that people can be that organized and get there and do that in a day. I really want the bottle already there so I can switch it over when I'm ready, but there are people that are doing that, and it's an exciting thing to see. And as I said, it's going to be a lot of different solutions, and there are some people who want to play an even more active role. So we're excited to see those pop up and continue to develop some product lines to work with that. We're looking at hospitality. How can we, try and get in on that, crack that nut. So yeah, we're just trying to continue to be creative. Our goal is just to help people reduce waste. I mean, it's in this personal care area, but the larger goal of just putting less stuff in landfills. So
yeah. Isn't that a simple thing to say? That's, and that's, if we look at it like that, really, I think that is such a key to all of this. Like, really, that's how simple it is. We want to put less in the landfill somehow. How do we figure that out?
And there are so many complicated issues we've got going on in the world right now. I think what appeals to me is that this one is relatively simple. You can get a handle on this.
Yeah.
There's some things that feel completely overwhelming, but this one, we can start playing a more active role, make some different choices, demand more from manufacturers and producers, and reduce it.
I agree. So how do we get a hold of you to buy your products?
Plaine with an E. Actually, my sister and I have the shared maiden name of Della Plaine, which is part of how we came to Plaine Products, but also sort of this idea of, it's a plain and simple solution. It's not a lot of technology, not an app, but yeah, PLAINE products.com. And then our social handle happily is @Plaine Products on all the channels.
Well done. Thank you so much, Landsberg Aurora, for sponsoring this podcast. If you're listening, please take a minute to review and make sure you're subscribed so you get automatic downloads. We appreciate all of you for listening. Thank you so much, Lindsey. What a great episode.
Thanks, Cory. It was a lot of fun.